All right. It's a little dark. Alrighty, live right now in the office. We're trying this out. Hopefully my mic is coming through pretty good. We'll see how this all goes tonight. Trying it on the YouTube. We'll see if this works. The chat feature, I think I figured that out. We're gonna let some people tune in and everything like that. And if you guys pop in, drop a comment. Let me know if you guys are tuning in, what topics you want to cover. I got a big box of topics is what I'm calling this for these live videos from now on. But like I said, I'm down here just in the office hanging out. Figured I'd knock out a live video for you guys, a live Q&A video with deer season kind of fast approaching here. Last property visit that I have scheduled, I just scheduled it tonight. It's this Friday. And then after that, we're just going to keep rolling with everything going on. So let me know, like I said, when you pop in, drop a comment down and let me know you're here, what we want to kick this topic off with. And we'll get going with that. So I appreciate anybody that's tuning into these, everything like that. I think I can see people as they tune on. Says I got one viewer right now, but like I said, if you guys pop in, drop a thumbs up, drop a comment. Let's get the conversation rolling tonight. Feel free to share this around on Facebook. You should be able to copy the link right in, anything like that. Share it over to a Facebook group on your own personal profile. I'd really appreciate it. Help get the word out about this channel. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy doing these live videos, these live Q&As, and hopefully that really helps you guys and girls that are working on your pieces of property or you're hunting in general. It might be something that's applicable to even hunting on a piece of public land. So, yeah, like I said, if somebody could drop a comment in and let me know that the chat's working, that'd be really good. This is the first time trying it on YouTube that I've kind of think I figured the bugs out on it. So we'll see how it goes. But we can just add to the conversation as the night goes on. But I'm gonna finish sharing this over to my page quick. Put it over on the Old Tin Cup page. And we'll see. So yeah, if anybody's tuning on, please drop a comment in and let me know that the feature's working, or if somebody's tuning on has my thing, we'll see how it goes. Can anybody see the comments? Should be able to drop a comment in on the thing. We'll see. Like I said, I'd really like to know if this comment thing's working. My buddy Jimmy says don't know where the comments are. Might have to redo it over on Facebook because this is just, I thought I had the kinks worked out with it. We'll see. Let me see if I drop a comment and see if this gets it going. So maybe that'll pop up on somebody's screen. Let me know if you're still seeing issues or whatever, or if that comment came up, that'd be cool. I'd really appreciate it. 6 p.m. So I don't think the comment feature is going to work, and I really was bumming about this, and this is why I didn't want to do these videos on this YouTube platform. It was suggested to me. I tried it again, worked the kinks out, so we'll see. But it's really frustrating that people can't obviously see this, which is really, really kind of a pain. Okay, perfect. Gotcha. So yeah, apparently it might not work on the phone for people tuning in, but if it's on a desktop computer or something like that, it works. So thanks for the heads up on that, Jimmy. I appreciate it. So there was a couple of questions that came in. I guess we'll just kind of roll with them in the beginning of this conversation. going forward, and then we'll kind of keep the conversation going with them, as it goes up. So we'll just keep the conversation going. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Everything's going crazy. So, all right. So first couple things that were on the questionnaire list, so to speak, came in from Roger Fuller. He contributes a lot of questions to these, and a lot of really good topics. So I'm going to pick through a couple of Roger's points. But if anybody tunes in or whatnot, drop your comments in. Let me know what you guys might want to see coming up in this video, or where the conversation might go going forward with it. So a couple of Roger's things he wanted to talk about and touch on was some of these no-till style food plots. That is something that I've been doing a lot more of lately. Everything this year was exclusively no-till unless it was a perennial clover plot or something along that line. So what I did with those plots is the big key is knowing the amount of acreage that you're planting, knowing the amount of seed, obviously, to plant on that acreage per species or per soil conditions. Amend your soils accordingly with lime fertilizer. And then, basically get a good kill of vegetation initially. That's your biggest thing, is getting any competing vegetation out of that plot and making a good weed-free competition for that seed bed. And then a lot of the stuff that we plant specifically for fall crops, for wildlife, and perennial plots too as well, you can get away with doing a lot of that no-till style method of that planting by just killing that initial with a glyphosate. And even if you can't get a cultipacker on it, or especially if it's a first-time plot, getting 1 or 2 sprayings on it throughout the year, and then you can transition into getting your, let's just say, your brassicas on it in sometime in mid-August. And then right now, a lot of people have been saying, well, what can I do to fix a food plot? I did post a video on the YouTube channel if you guys want to check that out, talking about how to save some of these food plots. Winter wheat, cereal rye, stuff like that can be really applicable, and you can plant that right up almost to October 1, maybe even a little later here. It depends on what your grow zone is, and if you're even a little south of New York, you can definitely get away with planting it later into the fall hunting season. So the no-till plots are definitely very, very, very applicable, especially if you don't have a lot of equipment, don't have a lot of time too. It's a huge time saver running no-till. You don't have to work the ground, and you can have great success and great results for that. And I'll be posting a lot more pictures and videos from the food plots, from the last minute checkups and stuff like that leading up here going into season. So the big thing that if you are getting just one control onto a no-till style plot, the one thing I really do like to see people doing when you're doing that is I like to broadcast my seed into it with the vegetation standing. Now, hopefully that's something you sprayed, but again, you can have good success spraying and killing that vegetation that first day that you're out there working that plot. And what you can do with that after, spread your seed, soil amendments, whatever it might be. Soil amendments, would be helpful if you could get them in the year before, but fertilizer and stuff can go on once the plants are up and established a little bit. That way you don't burn them out. So I broadcast into the standing vegetation that's either killed or going to be killed. And then I would roll that down with a packer or your 4-wheeler tires, truck tires, tractor tires, whatever it might be. Get that vegetation laying flat on the ground as best as possible. You might have to go over it once or twice depending on the way you have for equipment. It might take 1, might take 2 passes. So, that's a very, very, very easy thing to do. And then if you haven't got a spray on that plot yet, you can then go ahead and spray as long as you're not using something that is not soil active. Something like a glyphosate-based chemical is not soil active, but if you get into something like a 2,4-D or something like that, you can have some soil residuals with those chemicals. So you just have to be mindful of that when you're working with your chemicals on the food plots that you're planting. So that was something that Roger wanted to touch on, and I really appreciate his questions coming in and everything like that. And like I said, if you guys have any questions or topics, feel free to just drop them, in the comment section. I got a couple that popped in. So I see my uncle's there. That's 5 Watt World. He's got a great YouTube channel. If you got any interest in guitar stuff, by all means, go check out his page. Great information. He does history videos on guitars, amps, all sorts of stuff. Product reviews, I think, are even on that page a little bit here and there. So thanks for tuning in, Keith. And he had the first question on the live comments. Says, are deer colorblind? So deer see in shades, but they pick up on different colors a little bit better than others. So some of the colors obviously being like white, they pick up on white really well, hence the white tail for the white flag of danger, blah, whatnot. And then believe it or not, reds and blues, they pick up on those pretty well as well. So deer aren't really colorblind. They see in shades of gray, basically. So, that's a really good question, a really good topic. And then colors like orange, stuff like that, and then ones that are colors like orange and pink and stuff like that, they don't show up very well to a deer's eyes. That's why we can use those for safety colors and stuff like that when we're out hunting. So, but yeah, so that's the question about deer being colorblind, which is a good question to come into. Going right down through the comments, Jimmy O. I'll be out on Jimmy's on Friday, checking in with him. He did 3 acres of no-till this year, and since some big challenges with multiflora rows and some other stuff getting choked out underneath the buckwheat, what do I do to get in front of that next year? So with that, it's just a spot spray control, Jimmy, I think, and I'll look at it when we're out there on Friday for sure. But probably spot spraying that multiflora rows, and then just continuing with the process of turning that, because for everybody that doesn't know that piece, it was a big project going forward with getting those food plots knocked in on that property this year, and it's going to completely change the way that this property hunts and sets up. So that's definitely something that we can spot spray in those food plots. And if you have problem weeds, that's another really good point to kind of go into as a transit, is if you have problem weeds in a food plot. Something I dealt with a lot this year was nut sedge specifically. So I wanted to get a couple controls on that, a couple different chemicals on that. And then I don't think I have it completely killed. I think I just have it knocked back a little bit. So I'll probably use something like a Basigram or something like that next year, or a sedge hammer. We'll see how, what one's more readily available for me. And then we'll play around with that and try to get that nut sedge really knocked out of those plots, because it's pretty prolific in a couple of them. But yeah, so problem weeds like multiflora rose, that one's a shrub, but problem shrub or whatnot, especially when knocking in new plots, you might unearth some issues. And you just got to identify your weeds properly, identify your plants properly, and figure out the best way to control them. With the multiflora, I think it's going to be more of a spot spray application in that. And then I think that'll help you get out in front of it. And sometimes you turn up problem weeds, and that's why I try to get away from more disking and stuff like that, because disking is just bringing more seeds up from the soil, seeds that are viable for decades after they've been dropped there by the mother plant and whatnot. So that's one of the other reasons why I'm trying to get away from disking. And that plot specifically that I'm talking about with the nut sedge that we had issues with this year, that was one that was conventionally tilled, disc plowed, everything like that. So, that's something that we just kind of added fuel to the fire, so to speak, with spreading that nut sedge, being a rhizome spreader, and then all that nut sedge seeds that were down in that soil. I'm sure we turned those all up, and it's a pretty manicured landing strip looking area of nut sedge down on the bottom of that one field. So we got out ahead of it, got another knockback on it, and then seeded it really heavy with winter wheat and cereal rye for a cover crop to kind of choke it out going in the fall. And then in the next spring, having some control on it. And then, like I said, we'll go through and we'll terminate that crop, and then plant in whatever is going to be in that rotation. Probably going to be another year of annuals. Might even put in like some crimson clover and stuff like that next year. Some purple top turnip, daikon or tillage radish, stuff like that. Annual blend going into that plot. Not putting anything perennial into it, because I'm just going to add a higher chemical bill, being something that's more specifically selective. That's like not going to kill my clover. That's going to specifically hammer and handle sedge grass and stuff like that. So problem weeds, you're going to have them, but identify them properly, and then you can try to figure out the best control method for them. Because if you don't know what you're trying to control, you're not going to be able to get a good control on it for sure. So hope that answers your question, Jimmy, about multiflora rows in the food plot. So can't wait to see what it looks like. I'm really itching. I know your plot screen pictures you've been sending me are ridiculous. So how do we know and how do they test this? There's a really good article, Keith, for the colorblind question I think you're referring to. That there's a really, really good article over on QDMA.com. You can search. I think the title of it is Are Deer Colorblind, actually. And it goes into the whole process on how they've figured that out and how deer, see in the shades of gray and stuff like that and can pick up on different colors because of the wavelengths that are in their eye and stuff like that. So that can explain it way better than I can, off the top of my head. But that's a great article, and there's a lot of really good articles over there on QDMA.com. So that's a really good question right there for the colorblind thing for sure. And yeah, QDMA.com, and I think the article is Are Deer Colorblind or Do Deer See in Color, something along those lines. But that's right there. So Jimmy says first year disturbing, 30 years of seed bed. Yeah, absolutely. So you never really know what you're going to get until you kind of work the soil up or eliminate the vegetation that was on it. And then, you're going to have some soil disturbance and sunlight. You're going to see what's there in the native seed bed. There's no way really around that for sure. So, yeah, so that's how it is with the no-till plots and stuff like that. So that was a really good question Roger dropped in. And I appreciate his topics like that. The other one that client of mine, Marty messaged in. His question was specifically on switchgrass, and that's something that's kind of been a buzzword and something like that a lot of people have been really, really trying to get into your program, whether it's for screening or cover, whatever it might be. My kind of take on it is here in the Northeast, cover is not really a limiting factor. You can get some, and Jimmy just popped in with the switchgrass stuff. So I don't think switchgrass is necessarily a limiting factor for cover here in the Northeast like it is out in the Midwest and some of those states where there's large ag and small blocks of timber. So that's something that I don't see as that big of a priority for a cover perspective. I like the value of it and the idea of it that it will stand through the winter and provide good screening for food plot access, for whatever your access is, for stand locations, getting in and around a property, whatever it might be. Even having little pockets of cover, stuff like that, it can be very, beneficial, I think, in those ways for sure. So the big thing with switchgrass is it does not do competition when it's young. I did a small test strip of it this year on a gravel roadside, not in the gravel, but on the side of a gravel road on our property. I only sprayed it one time this year and then broadcasted right into it. Got very little take. I'm curious to see how it's going to go next year going forward. We'll see how much switchgrass really gets going and taken. I know the first couple of years are going to be kind of slow going where it gets that root established before it can really start getting some good height to it. I forget the varietal that was in that mix, and then I have a whole bunch of Cave and Rock switchgrass, which is ready to go in frost seeded this year, probably sometime around when I'm doing my clover plots. I'm going to play around, probably get one more spraying on my fall weeds into some of those areas. And then some of the area is actually going to be, I was watching a video by Jake Ellinger, who is a great consultant out of Michigan, Habitat Solutions 360, I believe is his company's name. Has great content on his YouTube channel as well. But he actually planted switchgrass in his sorghum screen. So I'm going to plant into that because you get very, very good weed control and suppression in that thick sorghum screen. So that's something that I'm going to be doing in a lot of my screening areas and access areas is I'm going to broadcast frost seed right into that. I'll probably mow that down or the snow will probably knock it down on its own here in New York. That sorghum Sudan grass doesn't really stand up to our New York winters that good, which is why I've tried to transition more into switchgrass, but switchgrass is expensive. So the big thing is getting a well-prepared seed bed, and by that I mean control your weeds and get a good handle on them ahead of time. I'm going to be putting them into a sorghum planting, which has been basically using a suppression method on that area that I'm going to be broadcasting most of my switch into. And you don't need a lot of it. You only want to spread switch on like a 1.5 gate. It's a very, very small, fine seed. I actually took it all up to the farm the other day, so I don't have it here in the office anymore. But that also requires a stratification period, which is also why I took it down there and put it into our seed storage bins. That way it can get those cold temperatures on it throughout the winter time here going forward, stratify, and then I can broadcast it out there for a frost seeding application into my areas. But the big thing is, and that's why I didn't plant it this spring, is I didn't have enough weed control going forward with it. So that's just something that you might have to play with some chemicals if you have stuff that comes up with it. But if you have an old field habitat, something with a lot of, let's just say, Timothy orchard grass, stuff like that, that you can't use a grass selective herbicide to control those small grasses on, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. They're going to choke out, especially those bunch grasses and stuff like that. They're really going to choke out that young switchgrass. So need to go in with a good control under that for your switchgrass. As for that, it can go in for screening, is where mine's the majority going to go into. But cover's not a limiting factor on mine. If it's an area on your property that you think cover is a limiting factor, I've gone to client parcels and stuff before where they say I don't have any cover, but they brush hog a whole 5-acre field, and they wonder why they don't have a lot of cover. So, think critically. Having good mixes of different types of cover is going to be very beneficial. We'll see if down the road I might put in some switchgrass pockets in bigger sections. But I really want to cut my teeth into controlled areas with it. Like I said, I'm working on a budget like everybody else is basically watching these videos, and I really want to be applicable with that. So I can't go out and buy 5, 10, 20 acres worth of switchgrass seed. So that's one thing that going forward with the switchgrass is it's got to do it right. Just like anything else, you got to do the right steps to have a good success with it. Jason Broom, are you planning to use simazine as a broadleaf pre-emergent before switchgrass comes up? So the issue with simazine here in New York is it is a restricted use pesticide. So it is not something that's readily available. So I don't know if I can go down to PA and get my hands on it and then bring it back up. I would optimally like to use simazine as a broadleaf pre-emergent. I'm going to talk to a couple farming friends of mine and see if there's another chemical that's comparable that I can get my hands on over the counter. But simazine is one that is unfortunately restricted use in New York, which means you can't get your hands on it just going down to your local feed store unless you have a pesticide license. So I would use simazine. That's been the go-to with a lot of people. But for me, it's been a 2,4-D Roundup mix a couple times. And then after the first initial application, it was spot spraying for problem weeds, and then maybe mixing up some sedgehammer and stuff like that for nut sedge coming into that. But nut sedge isn't going to be that competitive unless it's a large stand of it with switch. So I would like to use simazine, but I'm limited on what I can use for chemicals. So that's why I've gone more of a cover crop of a sorghum Sudan switchgrass, and then go through with that. With it. So yeah. Jason says maybe you can find someone to contract to spray, given that it's probably not a huge area. So chemical applicators are, obviously something I could look into. You're definitely right with that. I would have to just see if it's something that's economical to do that. Obviously you're going to have product costs and then time and labor. So we'll see, maybe that's something worth looking into. I do have a couple buddies of mine that are registered pesticide applicators, so maybe it's something I'll give Phil a buzz for and see if what he would run or charge me, and if he can get some simazine and knock that out for me. We'll see. So that's a good idea, Jason. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. I'm actually going to write that down. So that's a really good thought for sure. So thank you. And that's why I like these live videos. There's always people commenting or adding to the conversation, or maybe looking at it just a little bit of a different way than I am, or maybe somebody else is. And that's what's so cool about doing this habitat stuff and looking at different properties is I'm always learning something out on a client parcel. No matter where I am, what it is, you can never stop learning and never stop absorbing stuff. So I love having the conversation. I love looking at different areas and really picking apart what works and sliding in the right key pieces to make properties work. That's my passion. But that's definitely a great topic that you brought up there, Jason. Had another question that came in with from my buddy Roger. It was let me see here. So he said summer bucks and fall season bucks. He said, I'm sure a lot of people are getting pictures of these summertime bucks, but they're gone in mid-October. Are they gone, or is it just the time of the year? Um, he also stated that he knows the answer to that question, but he just wanted to contribute to the conversation, which is a good one to dive into. So this is actually kind of an odd year for me. We do have some soybeans kind of close to our piece of property. So I am holding some bucks right now that I typically don't have on camera. But I'm not really anticipating every one of those bucks to stay. I've started to pick out some of the ones that I had history with last year, whether they make our harvest goal or whatever of 4.5 that we shoot for, or if it's a different buck that we're just kind of tracking him as he's coming up through the age classes and whatnot. It's really cool to watch these bucks and try to figure out where they start to slot in on a piece of property. But that's something that we can really start to pick apart. It's really cool with cameras and the way technology is advanced. So typically I don't have much more than one or two bucks over maybe 100 120 inches on the property all summer long. I'll rarely get a picture of anything really older than probably like a 3.5-year-old all summer typically. And that's on 200 acres. So, you might be looking at that like it's a red flag. And usually you get a little nervous, going through September here, going into October. But my last card pull before season that'll be coming up, I think I'm probably going to pull cameras probably somewhere around the 26th to 27th, maybe even during the week. It depends on what the conditions are. And I'm also trying to, if I'm in an area, whether it's putting up a tree stand, checking on a food plot, I might pull a couple cameras that are, there and abouts in the same area. But I don't have to go deep into my property, do a full pull, whatever. And that's another good topic is with your trail cameras is not always trying to have a set schedule with them. It might be, like I said, when you're in there doing habitat work in an area. It might be when you're putting a stand location up, something that you might see, with your scouting, stuff like that. That's times I go in there and pull cameras. So there's some cameras that get pulled, have been pulled quite a bit because I'm just finished up the last of my trimming and my stand checks for the year with new straps, all that stuff. The only things I got to do now is just double check on some of the food plot stuff because I'll keep my eye on them, kind of keep checking their temperature on the food plots and trying to see, and I'll try to pull those in the middle of the day when typically deer won't be on the food source as well, on that kind of strategy with it. And I want to keep a temperature on that because if I need to add some winter wheat or cereal rye to those plots where there's bare spots, I want to make sure that field is covered with green, whether it's grains or whether it's broadleafs like brassicas and clovers going into the fall. I don't want any bare area, and winter wheat and cereal rye are definite musts in a food plot program, especially for saving stuff, especially for filling in a little bit of the blanks where you might have skipped a little bit with the cedar. You might have had, bad germination for whatever reason, wash out with some rain if you did some conventional tillage on a plot. So those are all things that you can, see going forward and then adjust those, like I said, right up to about October 1. So, that's something that you can always do for sure. But yeah, so that's a real good topic. But anyway, so Fall bucks, like I said, most of my bucks are coming onto the property. I kind of got off on a tangent. Most of my bucks are coming on the property, coming in, late September, early October is when a bunch of bucks really show up. And I've been able to kind of historically see that year to year. There'll be one or two, home body bucks that, or bucks that live on the property 365. And some of that changes year to year. They might slot into a different section of the farm, food source related or pressure related, whatever it might be. So you'll see a little bit of a shift, obviously, right now. So the other thing is that fall habitats are completely different than what deer need in the summertime. They're looking for big, cool, wide open hardwoods, which is a majority of properties across New York State. For the most part, ones that don't have a lot of management time on them. Those properties are basically biological deserts. I mean, other than some oak trees scattered around, but you have a dry year like this, half your acorn crop is already on the ground right now. So your fall draw of acorns is going to be out the window. So, stuff like that. And that's really your only food source in big, mature, open oak hardwoods. So that's not something that's going to be applicable. So having a mix of habitats on a piece of property, good, high quality green food sources, that's where you're going to pull those deer in and pull them off of your neighbor's pieces of property. Like I said, I saw it on a Facebook post. I think it was a day or two ago. A guy said, I have all these does on my property all summer long, everything like that. And then every fall, it seems, I have, good bucks on the property. He said 140 inches or whatever, year in and year out, some years even bigger bucks than that. And he said, why is this the way it is? And, what's wrong with it? And I just kind of blatantly said, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. If you want to have does on your property and can sustain that amount of population on your property throughout the year, we have resident does that are on that property daily, literally on camera, on some of our trail cameras daily. There's a couple of them specifically that have distinguishing characteristics that you can about set your clock to them, which is perfect. Because once you have a nice routine built with that doe group, then you can slot into that movement during the right time of the year. You can harvest one if you'd like, or you can sit on that movement and wait for the right opportunity. Because once you start disrupting the doe movement, then you disrupt the buck movement. And then once you disrupt the buck movement, your hunting becomes so random that you're rolling dice all the time. I'd rather be sitting there and know the probabilities are going up. The more strategically I hunt that property and the smarter I hunt that property and the less impact I put on that property, the better that property is going to be, especially deeper into the season. And that's why a lot of people experience that October lull. And that's something that I disagree with in some aspects, but I believe it's a man-made lull of October. And that's something that you see into other states. Even I've talked to people where you see it in September with some of these early opening seasons, is if you're not on them the first day or two, or don't have a deer on a set pattern that you still sticking to food or something like that, it's really easy to disrupt that kind of synchronization in their schedule. It's really easy to disrupt that, and once you disrupt it, you better plan on a couple weeks where it might not even be anywhere close to what it was, and it probably won't go back to the way it was before you disrupted that, that routine of movement on that piece of property. So that's why I think people experience that lull, is that's going to be something that you're going to see because of the added pressure in the woods, the more hunters out there. And I even see that in my neighborhood. And I think that's a lot of the reason why my property really peaks that last week of September, first week of October, is not only because of the hunters hitting the woods October 1 here in New York, but it's everybody getting that last minute, last season stand going up. You see them in, neighbors' beds of trucks. You see them, the four-wheeler tracks going into a piece of property last week or two of September. This year, and I've been guilty of it in the past for sure, but this year I'm sitting perfect right now for the most part. All the plots are seeded in, hoping we keep getting these timely rains, keep them plugging right along. They're looking really good. All the tree stands are checked and trimmed. I only have one new stand that I want to still put up. So we'll see if I can get that done. I hope to get it done tomorrow. But that's something we can drive the truck right to the tree. We can put it up. We don't got to haul it way back in, nothing like that. And that's a stand that I'm probably not even going to sit till, I'd say, the last week of October, maybe November, because of the way that all sets up. There's no reason for me to go in and hunt that stand. I have a lot of other lower impact stands that I can hunt and focus my time on, and maybe harvest a doe, or maybe have an opportunity if I get a good feeding pattern with a good buck that I'm after. I might try slide in and get them. But other than that, I'm really watching the weather and really trying to see where I have my drops. I tried to print it off because I was going to try to show you guys the way that I look at weather, and that's a great book that I would recommend. I'm very transparent. I pull stuff from a lot of different clients, consultants, seminars I go to. Like I said, I never stop learning. And one of the best whitetail minds in the country, in my opinion, when it comes to strategy, would be Jeff Sturgis, no doubt. And he's got some great books, really good, high quality YouTube channel. I can only hope to get over 100,000 subscribers or whatever he has one day, maybe. Until then, I'll keep, fluffing his channel and everything for sure for him. But his all-weather whitetails book, hands down, will change the way you hunt. It'll be the best $25 that you spend going into this hunting season if you don't already have that book. And you can take that right to the bank. That will change your hunting and everything immensely. Especially if you can be a little flexible with work and really start to read and look at the weather, your hunting success rate will go up exponentially. Or your opportunities, not necessarily success, but your opportunities will go up exponentially with watching that weather. So, and that's something where I've always kind of been a pressure guy. Some buddies of mine have been moon guys. But the big thing is temperature drops. The rut's going to happen every year. Our data in New York State and throughout the country has always supported that the rut will happen during the same time period every year. Contrary to some of the opinions that it's all moon driven or whatever, that's going to influence feeding times. Yes, I would say. And I agree with that, but I don't agree that it changes the breeding cycle. I think that you can directly relate that to the weather and watch that with the weather and see when it's cooler during the day, you're going to have more breeding activity during the day. If it has a 15, 20 degree temperature drop, I'd be hunting that. I'd be hunting those 2 days following that drop. Those are going to be slamming, banging days, as long as the wind's not going crazy on you or something like that. But even if the wind's really high up there and you see a 10 mile per hour drop in your wind, any of those drastic drops and changes, especially going on the downside of it, you're really going to pick up more success and better quality days out of that. Whereas late season, if you're getting warmer after we've had days down in the teens, single digits, and you finally get a little warm up into the 20s, you're going to see more deer activity then because they're not burning as many calories. Same thing in the fall, they're not burning as many calories, trying to stay cool with the warmer temperatures. And that's a lot of the reason why I don't like to hunt early October either, unless I have like a food pattern established on a specific deer. Or if, like I said, if I want to go in and harvest a doe or something like that, I can slot into some of the movements that are there and established. I can harvest my deer. No impact or very minimal impact. Get in, get out kind of deal. So I hope that kind of explains the fall shift and then kind of transitioning into the weather and why I see an October lull, so to speak. I think it's all human pressure derived, and the deer just move off onto a different property. It's not like they're nocturnal. I really dislike that term that deer are nocturnal. I just think that they get pushed further off of where you had them or where they were during daylight hours, and they're just seeming nocturnal because by the time they get to your property, it's way after dark. It's not the fact that they're waiting until 1 o'clock in the morning to get up and go eat. No, they've been already eating since dark, and then they may be bedded even between where you're getting a photo of them and where they started their their evening feeding, so to speak. They might even bed it somewhere in between on another property, cross 3-4 property lines, and then end up on yours at 2 o'clock in the morning. So it's all relative with that. And if you're seeing more daylight pictures than nighttime pictures, you're definitely doing something right. You're holding those deer during the daylight hours, which is when you're going to have the opportunity to shoot them. Unless you want to bust out the Spotlight, the 22 mag, you got to have them on your property during daylight. No way to really sugarcoat that. So, yeah. So I think that kind of covers. I'm just going to check, see if any other comments came in. Yeah, it looks like Jason's were the last comments to come in. If anybody has any questions, please drop them in. If not, I'm going to go to my bucket O topics, which is right here. This is my basket of topics. Some of them are quick, some of them are easy, everything like that. Also wanted to say that anybody tuning into this is a good kind of start to this bucket O topics. Anybody that comments tonight or lets me know that they're tuning into this, eligible to win a free onX membership. This is the last one I have from banquets and stuff I went to last year or 2 years ago at this point. That'll be a free premium year of onX, state of your choice. So that's a really good one. If you want to drop a comment down in there if you haven't already to get entered in that. I'll add up everybody's name at the end of it, and then we'll draw a quick winner. Just had a comment come in. Jimmy says, opening day advice. Opening day advice. Am I hunting opening day? I don't know yet. Might I go sit somewhere? Probably. I'll probably sit in the woods somewhere. I'll be focusing on where, if I am focusing specifically for a buck during that time, it'll be one that I have on a food pattern, like daily, routinely daylight. Other than that, I won't be wasting my time. I won't be sitting in my best rut stand if that's what people are thinking. It'll be an area where it's food related. Probably won't necessarily hunt a morning unless it's a morning like a couple years ago. Was 1 or 2 years ago, I can't remember. We had snow actually on opening day here, October 1. I think it was 2 years ago, 2 opening days ago. That morning, I should have been hunting in a morning set. There was deer all over on their feet that morning. It was ridiculous how much the property was going off. The cameras, totally said that for sure. So that's something that, you got to watch the weather. If you got a big temperature drop, I'd say, yeah, it's definitely worth hunting, especially if you got cooler temperatures going down into that evening time frame and you got a good quality food source. That might be a good opportunity, or someplace getting in fairly tight to the bedding, between bedding and food. Depends on a lot of different factors, but I wouldn't be pushing the envelope. Definitely wouldn't be sitting in like a best stand, so to speak, for that opening day, unless it's the right conditions. Weather's dropping, got deer on a good pattern, whatever it might be. For whatever reason, might be green soybeans still. Probably not likely here in New York because farmers need to have them solidified before they can harvest them. Unless it's something that you planted, late planted soybeans, a clover plot. I've seen people, have really good success opening a couple days on a clover plot. But yeah, my opening day might be sitting on a food source. I say on a food source, on a travel corridor going to a food source, something I can get off at night. Obviously something that works good with wind. I definitely won't push anything with a marginal wind. Excuse me. But I probably won't be hunting a morning unless, like I said, unless we got snow, which is not out of the realm of possibility. So, Jimmy says maybe a throwaway spot or somewhere that has a lot of doe traffic. Yeah, if your goal is to harvest a doe, I like to harvest a couple early on to make sure that I'm still sharp, everything like that. So that's something definitely that could have some merit to it. I sit a lot of quick in transition spots that I can slot in really close to a food source or a bedding area on a transition area. Especially early season, and a lot of my stands are like that now. If like my buddy that came out and helped me trim most of my stands, well, actually both buddies, they're like, you really don't go that far from your access road or even the road period to get to your stands. And I said no, because I move and manipulate the habitat and the features that the deer basically work to me, so to speak. Um, or I'll set maybe an observation stand. There's a couple utility right of ways on properties I hunt where I could see long distances. I might even sit in a hedgerow and do some long distance scouting and see, what deer are coming to like a food source. Not necessarily this year, but next year I got one of my properties has gone to alfalfa now. So that might be a definite early season draw, especially if we don't have an early frost. Might be something that there's a routine pattern on. A couple big hidden alfalfa fields on that property, so that might be something that's got merit. Apple trees that are dropping hard, oak trees that are dropping hard. Those are all fairly good and confident spots. I'm sure people are itching to get out in the woods. I am as well. But definitely, I would not sit your best stand. Definitely not your best. Your best rut stand or one of your stands that you got to go way through a piece of property to hunt. And in a lot of cases, you shouldn't have a stand that causes more harm than good. It's going to do nothing but be counterproductive. And I let that plague me and the people I hunt with on pieces of property that we hunt. I let that plague us for years, just because the stand was good, the sign was good, but you got to get away from hunting the sign. And especially if you can control the property and own it and can manipulate it, you can change the way the deer flow on it very, very easily, and have good success with it. And definitely make sure your wind's right, your thermals are working for you, and not against you in any way. And that's where you're going to see success on opening day. But other than that, I probably wouldn't sit a morning. It's not like that late October, early November, especially for me, where it really, ramps up here. Like the first couple of days of November, there's a really, really hard seeking phase year in and year out. If you got a good temperature drop in that first week of November, there's, half a dozen spots on the property that you're going to see a shooter, no matter what. You're going to see a good buck. So whether it's the one you want and whether it's one you get a shot at, that remains to be seen. But it's food in early season. It's food driven, 100%. And then again, good access is going to be your best friend. And don't screw it up on the first day. I can't overstate that enough. So I hope that helps. But anyway, back to the Bucket O topics. Talked about the onX memberships. On the topic of books, do two other little quick topics. This is another must if you're doing any kind of habitat management, food plots, anything like that. This is Dr. Craig Harper's. This is the revised second edition, Wildlife, Food Plots, and Early Successional Plants. This is a must-have for your office library or your nightstand bedside table if your wife, fiance, girlfriend, or husband is okay with that. That's a definite must. Got great plant profiles in it for native stuff to look for, not look for, etc. And I guess while we're on topic of books still, this has been my go-to and fix-it book. I had years and years of food plot data, stand location polls. I had stand maps, everything like that. Somehow, when I moved houses, I lost all that. So I lost all my years of field data from food plots. I lost a lot of my hunter observation data, and I'm really, really bummed about it because I look at a lot of that stuff year to year to year to figure out hunting 1 year rule that I call, looking at specific bucks and kind of those kind of things. So this has been my new bread and butter this year. This will get transferred into a food plot binder for the food plot information. Stand locations and stuff will probably be kept in here. Trail cameras, where they're put, will probably get put in here continually. So this will probably be the tree stand and food plot book, tree stand and trail camera book going forward. And then the food plot stuff will all change to an individual binder with fields separate. I'm pulling soil samples here probably when I do my last minute checks on the plots, and those will go out. That way I know what I can what I can throw out for lime and fertilizer, planning on going into the next spring, summer, fall, whatever it might be. So starting from scratch, but this is also a good time to remind you guys to start writing down your information, get soil tests, get information on your fields, and keep track of your stands and cameras. That way you don't forget about them. Because when you're running a lot of cameras, running a lot of stands, running a lot of projects, you're going to forget stuff. But having it written down in good sections, like I said, I have all my field information, second trail food plot. I have the acreage, when it was sprayed, what it was sprayed for. This one had curly dock and other problem weeds in it. You can look at stuff like that. You can see I planted at 626. That was a buckwheat planting. And then I sprayed the far west side of it on 626. And then I planted less than 0.1 pounds of screen mix on that as well on the same day I planted. And then I sprayed it again because I didn't get a good kill on the one section of it. You see that on 819, and then I planted on 9-2 over there. That went into clover and wheat for that field specifically. But this lets me know problem weeds, field information, stuff like that. I also write down the seed mixes, how much seed went on these plots, etc. That way you can know if it's working out or if it's not. And we're going to be putting out more food plot videos when we go check those fields out. So that's a must. Keeping a good journal, keeping good data, good information on your food plots, on your tree stands, on your trail cameras. It's going to just help you be more successful. Trail cameras, that's a good little segue for this topic. I pull my cameras. I have a couple of these depending on where I'm going, what property, what side of the road, whatever it might be. I have different cameras and different cards already for those cameras. So all I have to do when I pull up to that camera is pop a card out, put a new card in, and I'm off to the races. Or put a new card in, format the card, and then I'm going to shut it up and I'm off to the races. But last minute camera checks, like I said, will come in at the end of September. I'll tune up my batteries. It might be a full change out. It might be change half the batteries in the stack. Depends on the camera, stuff like that, and the battery life. But those card carriers are a must. Those are also labeled with where they are relatively. They have all these nice little tapes on them. That's crabapple, second trail food plot. So this also helps you keep them straight. This one's actually wore off. So that's another thing that'll be going through and double checked, is making sure all my camera cards are marked and everything accordingly. Also let you know if you've trimmed and checked all of your stands for being safe this fall as well. So that's really good. Another tip, batteries. There's batteries in here, so that's a good topic. Like I said, I was just throwing stuff in here when I was cleaning up, and I said I'm going to make a bucket of topics. Batteries right now, going into this fall, if you are running any kind of decent quality trail cameras, getting a new set of batteries in them or freshening up half of them or whatever it might be, don't let that camera die in the middle of the season and mess up your information. Because like we talked about before, it's all good with the way the deer are on a piece of property in the summer. That's cool. That's great. Get velvet pictures, all that stuff. But I want to be able to hunt them in the fall and have good information going forward about what deer are using what section of a property, what bucks are in the area, what time does are hitting food sources, what bucks might be hitting a food source if I'm going to try to get on one early season and pattern one up that way. There's a lot of different good things that can come from getting good quality information on your cameras. This is one that's going to go back out now that the farmer just pushed back the hedgerows where this camera was. And this will go back out over there on a mock scrape in that area. And then if you're lucky enough to have good quality cameras, this happens to be a Covert MP8. This camera, I believe, I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day about it. I think this camera is going on 8 years old. Maybe. I think it's like 7-8 years old. It had actually, the camo had faded off of it completely. It was bright white, stuck out on the tree like a sore thumb. So that's another little tip. is paint them up nice and black, tape everything off so you don't get any issues with the infrared or with the sensor screen or the lens. Um, and these coverts are amazing, especially the MP8s. I mean, they're bulletproof. I love the Gamekeeper ones, which are basically covert guts. They're the Sensus 1080s. Those are phenomenal cameras. I run them on video mode, so I don't get as good a battery life. But those MP8s, they'll usually last me. If I put them out, I can get just about 10 months to a year out of them. And that's with a pretty heavy picture load, especially in the fall. So those are really good. So we've talked about. Oh, this is a good one. So we've talked about stands, food plots, everything like that. But some of the most overlooked things going forward, and I've been neglectful of it in some respects. In the past, obviously, I've always shot my bow, always tuned my broadheads, everything like that. So I wanted to talk about a couple quick tips. I've talked about these in a couple of my videos before. I was shooting dirt nap broadheads. I switched that just recently. So what I do with my arrow, gotcha. So thanks for tuning in, Keith. Appreciate it. He's got to go call my old man. But so one thing that I do with a lot of my arrows is I will defletch them. I'll usually do this when I have an arrow that gets beat up or the fletchings get ripped off or whatever it might be. This one's good, got refletched. But you can see that I knock tuned it before, and then I double checked it once I put the fletch on. And then mark the fletch that I want to be kept up when I put this arrow on the string. Especially when I'm switching over from my regular nocks to my lighted nocks. This is a good thing to double check because I had issues with this last year and I couldn't figure it out till this year, and I started looking at it. The way that my bow sits and my arrow sits on my string, the cable comes and it comes too close to the fletch, and actually was rubbing the fletch, and I couldn't get my broadhead to tune because I was basically getting a kick off of that cable every shot. So I couldn't get a tune with the fletchings being straight up and down. Hence where I had to get really, really anal and really specific with my knock tune, and you can see it's just slightly off where it sits about right like that. So you can see that it's not sitting like it would traditionally sit. It's actually sitting right there. And that's where that arrow flies. Boom, true. And so I tune that with my broadhead, and I'll get that, and I'll double check that by turning the knock around third turns, quarter turns, eighth turns, 16th turns, whatever you want to, however anal and how picky you want to get with it. You can tune a fixed blade broadhead, no problem. The other thing that is an absolute must, and the reason I switched back to some old tried and true faithfuls, I've run Muzzies before. However, I wasn't seeing good quality sharpness out of the package with those. So I went back to another faithful of mine that's been in the past, and that's these Montech G5s. Super easy to sharpen head. They're literally designed so you can sharpen them on a stone 2 blades worth at a time. The way the angles are, they work perfect. Specifically with the G5 stone, they have a rough side and then a coarse side and a smooth side. So you can get really good sharpness out of these heads. These ones have been practice heads in the past and ones that I have left, that didn't get beat up, but these are about bulletproof as you can get. These are really good heads. And the reason I switched from dirt naps, and I love dirt nap broadheads, and they are super sharp out of the package, hands down. The problem is they are a bear to sharpen, and I'm not a professional sharpener by any means, but I want to see that cut paper and cut it consistently, or rubber band test, whatever method you use to check your broadhead sharpness. I couldn't get them to sharpen. You can see that this has a nice flat line of a blade. The problem with a dirt nap head that I found, and I'm not a good enough sharpener to handle it, master it, or whatnot, is that's not flat. It's slightly crested. So you need a specific jig or something to sharpen these. I don't feel I have enough time or confidence to do that, and I don't want to be shooting a dull broadhead. So shooting a sharp broadhead, tuning your broadhead to make sure it hits where it needs to hit. And then after I'd probably shoot that, I'd give it a couple strokes on the fine stone, make sure my edge is still there, paper test it quick, and then I'm good to go with it. So those are two really good tips there. Super sharp broadheads, nock tuning and turning your arrows so your broadheads fly true and straight, and then making sure that your fletches clear your cable slide, or your cables on your thing. So this arrow actually sits, so it's a different arrow, and they're all marked specifically. So this one's actually on the inside of this fletch, with this fletch being up. So this one actually sits about like that. It almost sits perfect with the cock feather facing me when I'm pulled it back. But that's just how this arrow likes to shoot. So each arrow is going to have its own spot that it will shoot a sweet spot. So, and you don't have to necessarily probably get this anal with, let's just say, an expandable broadhead, but I want something that is a cut-on contact, will punch through and not like deflect or fail to open, anything like that. If any of you know the 8-ball story, I had very bad experience with expandable broadheads. I've had feast and famine with them, and I've gone back to a fixed blade head because the only person that can screw it up is me. Not basically crossing my fingers I don't have a mechanical failure with it. So, bucket O topics. Got just a couple things. So this, don't worry, it's not dog shit. This is actually rye grass. And the reason I wanted to talk about this was because I went and tried to buy some local rye, and actually when it came out, I was like, that's not what I want. That's grass, not grain. I don't want to build a yard. I wanted to build a food plot. So this is rye grass, and I know this is very hard to see. It's very flat, very light, very fluffy. Hopefully that tunes up. Yep. So there's probably 60 seeds there or so. So rye grain, I didn't have any for comparison, but the easiest way I can explain rye grain is it looks like little brown rice. So make sure you are planting like rye grain instead of rye grass. This is for filling in bald spots in my yard and fixing divots from plow season. This is not for building food plots. So make sure you're using the right rye when you are putting it into your food plots. And again, here in New York, you can get away with planting that right up into October 1 and maybe even further into October as you go. The other thing I wanted to touch on that I should have touched on at the beginning of this video when I had more people tuned in is the QDMA Sweet November raffle. This is a gun a day for the whole month of November. It's a $50 ticket, but it gets you a chance at 30 different guns. And this corresponds with the New York State's 3-digit lottery number. I have tickets for sale. There is only 999 of them sold. I have I think 20 of them. So if anybody's interested in those, by all means, let me know. I'll be buying a couple of them. I actually won the crossbow for the July raffle, so I was really pumped about that. But I'll definitely be buying some tickets because there's some really nice guns on here. Remington 870, Thompson Center Impact muzzleloader, Glock 9mm, Smith & Wesson 45, Ruger 357. The list goes on and on. There's just some really, really good guns on here. And for $50, you get a chance at 30 guns, and you can win more than once if you're lucky enough to get your number drawn more than once. So, but get better odds, buy more than one ticket. Makes sense. So I only bought 2 tickets, and I ended up winning. So probably won't win again. But anyway, so that kind of covers broadhead sharpness, broadhead tuning, which is huge, and get out and shoot your broadheads. I don't care if you shoot them out of a compound, a crossbow, a traditional bow. You're going to get different flights the way that nock is oriented on that arrow. there's no doubt in my mind if you're shooting a fixed blade broadhead that's going to turn, twist, and change. There's no way around it whatsoever. So it's definitely something that you gotta play with, but it's not hard. If you're out there getting reps in and you've been consistent with your shooting, you just start turning the nock and you'll literally watch the arrow go around the target until it hits your spot. So, and I did a video on that. It's on the YouTube channel if you want to check that out. I think I might have called it nock tuning your broadheads or something like that. So that's a really good one to check it out. Also have a lot of other really good videos on the YouTube channel. If you did want to check those out. If anybody's still tuned on, I see you got 3 people tuned on still. If anybody wanted to drop in a comment or a question, we'll get the conversation. We'll keep it rolling with it. So if you want to keep the conversation going, we will. I was going to dig into the box of topics a little bit more, but the box of topics was a little bit empty. Apparently I need to clean up around my office and the basement hunting area more, so to speak, before going into one of these live videos. I do like the YouTube. I do kind of like the setup on it. I do like how the question or the comments are right there. However, I think for future videos, and you guys could tell me if I'm wrong, I think I just connect with more people on the Facebook platform than I do the YouTube platform. So when I do my end of September deer season eve video or whatever it might be, that I usually do with a live video, that one will probably be over on the Facebook page. But again, all my videos are coming off of the YouTube channel now. Trying to build that, because I've seen where that definitely has benefits of reaching more people, people that wouldn't necessarily see my posts or see my videos. So that's one of those things that I really want to build this channel, because I've had people contact me from the Carolinas, even in the Midwest, stuff like that, Pennsylvania, New York, people that might not have had even an opportunity to reach on the Facebook platform, but found my videos through the YouTube community and they liked what they saw and they hang around and check it out. So I really, really, really would like to build the YouTube to help people all over, if I can, for sure. But yeah, I think the next live will be back on the Facebook rather than the YouTube, but maybe not. We'll see. Because I had some people that were also having issues getting connected or commenting because of phone issues versus desktops too. So this might be some issues across the board. Jimmy O, what are some habitat housekeeping tips for during the season and the following winter? Habitat housekeeping. Need a sip of beer. Now I can articulate better. All right, so habitat housekeeping tips during the season. Not doing a whole lot habitat-wise during the season. The only thing that might be an exception to that is if I am putting on cereal rye, like we talked about, to a food source to keep it green in spaces where it's a little light, or could use a little fill-in. But the following winter, I would critically look at how your property hunted that year, areas that might have been on your improvement list going forward in years coming. Transitioning into where you want to go with your food plots the next year, whether you have to do more amendments, lime fertilizer, etc. Working on getting rid of invasive species. I mean, the list goes on and on. I have a ridiculous laundry list of stuff I want to do. Even some habitat and hunting housekeeping stuff would definitely be checking your stands going into season, and then routinely somewhat throughout season is make sure that you kind of give your stand a once over before you actually sit down, and make sure that you're clipped in with your harness, everything like that. I can't overstate that enough. My dad took a spill out of a stand a couple years ago and got caught up by his leg, actually, messed up a bunch of stuff in his knee, and his knee has never been the same since. So could have been a lot worse. He could have came down, 17, 18 foot, and had something worse happen to him. So definitely harness up if you're up in a tree. Harness up when you're setting stands, checking stands. Like I said, I had buddies of mine come out. My good buddy Jake and my buddy RJ, they came out and helped me trim and set and move some stands around this year, and I really appreciate it. And we actually did a count last night when I had when my buddy came over after leagues. My buddy and his sister came over after leagues down at Heritage. When he came back here, we were talking about it and everything, and he said, "Yeah, we finally got a couple more stands to do, stuff like that." And I said, "Yeah, I think we're all done. All of them are trimmed and checked. I mean, they're all written down in the book that they're trimmed and checked, but I still want to do one more." And I said, if I do get this last one in and that last ground blind, I want to get in on that small lease piece of property I have. Um, that'll make an even 40 stands and blinds between all my properties. So it was definitely a busy August with making sure all my stands were ready, all the plots were ready. I did a record number of food plots this year. We have right now, I think, 13 total planted acres between the properties that I hunt, which is way, way, way bigger than usual. We usually have somewhere around 8 or 9, depending. So definitely got busy this year. I was a little bit lighter on the habitat work side of stuff, so that helped me have more time to do my stuff. But I definitely enjoyed doing it. I did update my New York map for my consulting, which was something cool, and I really, really, really enjoyed doing this. Is adding new counties. For whatever reason, I've never been to Cortland County on a consult. So if anybody watching this or know anybody in Cortland County with property, I'd love to come consult there to fill in this spot, because that just kind of bugs me. That there's one random county that I've never worked in. Same thing out here by Buffalo, Niagara, Erie, and actually Genesee County. I've never consulted in either. And then there's been a couple kind of out eastern side of New York, but there's a couple consultants out that side of New York. So I mean, there's lots of ground to go around, and that's something that there's some really good consultants throughout the state, especially on the eastern side of the state, western side of the state. There's good other knowledgeable people around. I think it's just like anything else in life, whether it's a contractor, whether it's a lawyer, whatever it might be, a doctor. Find a consultant or somebody that would fit with what you want to do. And I'm just flat out honest with people about how I kind of approach it and how I work on it and do it and look at a property. And if that doesn't really jive, I wish them the best. And, I invite them to go talk to other consultants or reach out to other people and see if, they fit better for them, because it's their money. And if, I want them to trust me, and I want them to, have that faith in me that I'm going to be the best fit for them. And you can only get that by being honest with the client. So that's something that I guess I take pride in, but that's kind of the last couple housekeeping habitat things. Is just kind of watching throughout the season, and that's where it goes back to the journal that we talked about earlier in the bag of tips, looking at kind of your hunting data, your stands, how productive they are. You might even find some spots that you think work good or look good on paper, and then you get there and it just happens to be when the wind you think was good for that stand, because it's a west and you thought it would blow just this way, it ends up kind of swirling funny or gets a kickback out of a bottom, whatever it might be that you weren't anticipating. And I had that happen this year, and actually had to move a couple stands this year because of that, just because they were good spots and they looked good on paper. They looked like you'd be right on the side of the movement with good access, and the access was killer. And I just moved a different direction down that same access, and I redid the stand locations based on what I was seeing and how I was seeing the deer react and the deer utilizing that area. I was then adjusting accordingly for this season. So I think I got it figured out. It should be good. The one actually has kind of an opposite end approach this time, because it just makes more sense with that. But so that's something too that you can start to critically critique yourself throughout the season. Continually shoot your bow if you can. I usually have like 1 or 2 practice arrows with broadheads on them that I will shoot throughout the season. Shoot 5-6 shots a day if I can. If not, I'll shoot, a dozen, 2 dozen times a week. And that's an at minimum during deer season. You owe it to the animal to do the best you can, to have the sharpest and best tuned equipment that you can, and do the best to make a quick and ethical kill on the game that you're pursuing. So, but yeah, so I want to thank everyone for tuning into this video. Appreciate the people that hung on through this. I don't know what we peaked at for viewers at one point or not, but I see 2 people still hanging on, 3 thumbs up. So I appreciate the comments and the conversation with everybody tonight, and look for probably going with a Facebook video. I'll probably schedule at some point. Opening day is actually a Thursday. I'm looking at the calendar right now. Opening day is a Thursday this year, so I might even do something like that 28th, 29th, because then I'll be able to get a feel for what the weather is going into opening week and opening weekend. So we'll have kind of a first week kind of hunting forecast and something like that kind of built into that, and we'll do that over on the Facebook page. So, but thank you everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it if you shared this around, contributed to the conversation, dropped a like, or just checked that out in general. I really appreciate it. So thank you everyone, and I'll catch you all next time here in the office or here in the field of one of my videos. By all means, drop me any questions or comments anytime on what you might have. I'd love to help you. So thank you. Take care.